I still remember the sound of his voice. Sharp, smug, like the tick of a clock right before an explosion. It was 8:47 a.m. on a Monday when I walked into the office. My coffee was still warm. My to-do list already buzzing in my mind. I had 2 major client meetings scheduled and a final presentation for the quarterly board update. It was just another busy day. Until it wasn't. He was waiting near my desk. Chase, 28 years old, fresh MBA from Stanford, brand new haircut, brand new shoes, and brand new title. Acting Vice President of Strategy, also known as the boss's son. "Jessica," he said flatly, as if my name was an inconvenience. "You're needed in the conference room." I blinked. Is there a meeting I wasn't aware of? He didn't answer. He just turned and walked away. The pit in my stomach formed instantly. I had worked here for 10 years, long before Chase ever learned how to tie a tie. Long before his dad, Mr. Holloway, our respected VP, quietly mentored me into leading the entire strategic partnerships team. I had navigated mergers, led international rollouts, and fixed 2 client disasters without blinking. But none of that seemed to matter now. When I entered the room, Chase didn't offer a seat. He stood in front of the whiteboard, arms crossed, radiating arrogance. 2 junior HR reps sat nearby, clearly uncomfortable. "I'll get straight to the point," Chase began. "We're restructuring. This division needs new vision and competent leadership." My heart sank. "You're letting me go?" I asked, still stunned. He nodded once, cold, mechanical. "Effective immediately. No hard feelings, Jessica. We just don't have space for imbeciles." The room went silent. The word hung there. Imbeciles, like poison in the air. I could have said 100 things, defended myself, listed every success, every sacrifice, every weekend I gave up while Chase was still figuring out how Excel worked. But I didn't. I simply looked him in the eye, smiled politely, and said, "Understood." Then I walked out. Not a tear, not a word more. But inside? Inside, something cracked. I packed my things in silence, my coworkers exchanging shocked glances. No one dared speak, not openly, but I could see it in their eyes. Confusion, pity, fear. No one was safe now. By 10:15, I was gone. As I sat in my car, still in the parking lot, I stared at the building I had helped shape. It felt foreign now, like a stranger's house, one I'd never enter again. But even as the pain settled in, a thought began to surface. A quiet, insistent thought. He didn't read it. I didn't know where it came from at first, but the more I turned it over in my mind, the more it made sense. He hadn't been in any of the meetings. He hadn't signed the contracts. He hadn't been there when Mr. Holloway insisted, after the failed deal with Parallax, that my next contract include a very specific clause. A clause that Chase probably never even saw. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying it. His smug expression, the arrogance in his voice, the confidence of someone who believed they'd already won. But it wasn't victory. It was ignorance. By sunrise, I knew I wasn't angry anymore. I was curious. Around 8:04 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. "Jessica, it's Alan Holloway." The voice was rough, stressed. My breath caught. "Hi, Mr. Holloway." "I just got into the office," he said, breath tight. "And your desk is empty. What the hell happened?" I paused. "Your son fired me." Silence. Then, "What? When?" "Yesterday. Said I wasn't competent enough." I heard movement, papers shuffling, something slammed hard. "Did he even read your contract?" There it was. I sat up straighter. "I don't think he did." "Jessica, you're still the only authorized signatory on the Turnian deal. That contract, the one we're closing today, you're the only one legally permitted to represent us." My heart thudded. I heard Mr. Holloway curse under his breath. "No way." Then he whispered, mostly to himself, "His hands are going to shake when he reads that clause." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I could feel it. The game had just shifted. Mr. Holloway hung up after that, but the silence that followed said more than any angry words could. I sat in my living room, coffee untouched, heart pounding, not with fear anymore, but with a strange mixture of vindication and dread. He hadn't read the contract. He really hadn't read it. 6 months ago, after the Parallax deal went up in flames due to a junior manager overstepping, Mr. Holloway called me into his office. I still remembered the conversation vividly. "You're the only one I trust to navigate these kinds of partnerships," he had said, pacing slowly in front of the window. "So I'm putting it in writing. From now on, any major account, like Turnian, goes through you. Legally, exclusively." It had seemed like overkill at the time, but I'd nodded, signed the revised employment contract, tucked it away in the HR database, flagged for compliance. Chase had never been looped in. He was still in grad school when we signed Turnian, still learning buzzwords like synergy and disruption while I was negotiating with billion-dollar partners in 2 time zones. And now he'd fired the only person who could legally close the most important deal this company had seen in 5 years. The irony? It didn't even feel good. Not yet. Because I knew what was coming next. Damage control. It started at 9:06 a.m. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then 9:08, another call. Reception. I silenced it. At 9:12, an email popped into my inbox. Subject, URGENT, Turnian meeting access. Sender, chase.holloway@cole-strategy.com. I opened it slowly, savoring the panic behind the formality. "Jessica, there seems to have been a misunderstanding regarding your employment status. We would appreciate it if you could attend today's Turnian call at 11 a.m. Please confirm ASAP. Chase." No apology, no admission, just an assumption that I'd drop everything and clean up his mess. I stared at the screen, expressionless. Then I clicked reply. "Chase, I will attend the meeting only under the conditions outlined in my contract. I suggest you review it before 11. Jessica send. Simple. Surgical." 10 minutes later, I received a call from a blocked number. I picked up this time. "Jessica, it's Alan again." "Morning," I said calmly. "I just saw the email Chase sent you," he said, sounding as though he was trying not to explode. "He still doesn't get it." "No," I said. "He doesn't. He's scrambling. Legal just flagged the clause. He's in his office, pacing like a lunatic." I didn't respond right away. I was waiting for the part I knew was coming. Ellen sighed. "Will you help us salvage this?" There it was. I closed my eyes, thinking. I wasn't angry, not in the screaming, throw things kind of way. I was something else. Tired. Not just from the last 24 hours, but from years of invisible labor. Of being the one who saved the day while someone else took the credit. The one who smiled through dismissive remarks. Who stayed late without asking for thanks. Who coached juniors while watching men like Chase step over them and me for titles they hadn't earned. "I'll help," I said finally, "but I'm not doing it as a favor." "I understand," Alan said. "No," I replied. "I don't think you do. I'll help because I care about the company. But if I walk into that boardroom today, things change. I want everything in writing. I want my authority respected. And I want Chase nowhere near the negotiation table." There was a pause. Agreed. "And Alan?" "Yes?" "This is the last time I clean up someone else's mess without a title to match the responsibility." Another pause. Then, "Fair enough." I ended the call and stood up. Slowly, deliberately. I changed out of my sweats and into the navy blue suit I wore for major negotiations. I tied my hair back, applied lipstick like war paint. By 10:42, I was walking through the front doors of the building. People stared. The receptionist stood as I passed, almost knocking over her coffee. "Jessica, I thought you were—" "Not quite," I said, offering a faint smile. The elevator ride up to the executive floor was silent, But the second the doors opened, I saw the shift. Eyes. Everywhere. Conversations halted mid-sentence, phones lowered. I walked past them all. Chase was pacing in front of conference room B. When he saw me, his expression flickered. Part rage, part relief, part disbelief. I didn't stop walking. I didn't greet him. I walked into the room, placed my folder on the table, and calmly began preparing the presentation slides I had designed 2 weeks ago, the ones he was supposed to present. Turnian's team joined via video at exactly 11 a.m. The deal went through flawlessly. Not a single hiccup. And Chase? He wasn't invited to speak. After the call ended, Mr. Holloway looked at me across the room. His face was unreadable, but his eyes said everything. We both knew this wasn't over. But for now, I had just proven what Chase had failed to see. I wasn't just another cog in the machine. I was the one who kept the machine running. The meeting room emptied slowly, like a theater after the final act of a play that had gone off script. I stayed behind for a few minutes, organizing my notes, my hands steady, my breath calm. Across the table, Mr. Holloway hadn't moved. He sat with his fingers tented beneath his chin, staring at the signed agreement like it was both a lifeline and a ticking time bomb. "You saved us," he said finally. I looked up. Number I saved the deal. Saving the company might take more work. He gave a slow nod, clearly understanding the difference. As I left the room, Chase stood just outside, still pretending to type something on his phone, like that made him invisible. His face was unreadable, but I knew what I'd see if I looked long enough. Shame, humiliation, rage. I didn't stop. I didn't acknowledge him. I walked past him like he had done to me just the day before. And yet, I knew better than to think this was finished. Men like Chase don't burn out quietly. They wait. They plot. They retaliate. By Friday, the energy in the office had shifted. Not publicly. Everything looked normal on the surface. But underneath the routine greetings and team huddles, something was off. Too many glances over shoulders. Conversations cut short when I entered the room. A spreadsheet I had finalized mysteriously had 2 data points altered, and the blame subtly pointed in my direction. At first, I thought it was just paranoia. Residual stress from the whiplash of being fired and then begged to return. But then it escalated. One afternoon, I received an email flagged by IT, a misfiled client invoice sent from my account. The file included the wrong account code, which would have caused a serious financial delay if the client hadn't questioned it. But I hadn't sent it. I never even opened that invoice. I walked straight to internal systems. They pulled the access log. It had come from a shared workstation in the break room. Someone had used my credentials. "You're not the only person this has happened to," the tech whispered after glancing over his shoulder. "We've flagged a few other strange activities in recent weeks. Files modified, emails redirected, all under senior accounts." I narrowed my eyes. "Has this been reported?" He hesitated. "We've submitted a few alerts to upper management, but they're slow to escalate unless there's hard proof." I nodded, jaw tight. "Then I'll get proof." That night, I stayed late. Most of the office had cleared out. I sat in the dark corner of the glass-walled conference room with my laptop and a pen, jotting timestamps, access logs, and employee IDs. Anything that didn't line up. I cross-checked email activity against badge access to physical terminals. Patterns began to emerge. It wasn't just a mistake. It was coordinated. Every so-called error made me look careless, disorganized, unreliable. And every one of them conveniently coincided with someone trying to position themselves for a role I had been promised but never officially given. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. Chase wasn't just trying to clean up his image. He was trying to erase mine. The next morning, I requested a one-on-one with Mr. Holloway. I didn't go through his assistant. I walked straight into his office and closed the door behind me. "I need 10 minutes, I said. "No interruptions." He leaned back in his chair, surprised but not dismissive. "Go on." I handed him a printed packet of documentation, emails, logs, screenshots, inconsistencies, and my own annotations in red ink. This is what's been happening, I said. This isn't incompetence. It's sabotage. He read silently, page by page. His expression darkened. His eyes narrowed. Who else has seen this? He asked. Only IT, but they don't have the authority to act. You do. There was a long silence before he responded. I trusted him, he said, barely above a whisper. I wanted him to grow into something better. I didn't say anything. He's angry, Mr. Holloway continued. He knows he failed, and he's trying to take back control the only way he knows how. And if I hadn't caught it? I asked. If the deal had gone south, or a client had walked away over a doctored email? He didn't answer, because we both knew the answer. I would have taken the fall, just like so many others before me. I want an internal audit, I said, and I want it today. You'll get it, he said. And Jessica, I met his eyes. This won't happen again. Not to you. Not on my watch. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But power doesn't shift just because someone says so. It shifts when someone fights for it. And I was done playing defense. The audit began quietly, almost invisibly. No announcement, no office-wide memo. Just a few new faces in tailored suits, carrying laptops and asking vague questions while pretending they were just shadowing for a cross-departmental review. But I knew what was happening. Everyone did. You could feel it in the air, the same way animals sense a storm. Conversations slowed when doors creaked. People double-checked emails before hitting send. I watched junior analysts delete Slack messages in real time. No one was saying Chase's name, but his presence was everywhere. On Monday, a member of the audit team, David, asked to speak with me privately. He was calm, professional, and precise. The kind of man who looked like he read employment law in his free time. We've traced several irregular login patterns, he began, clicking through a series of access logs. Each of them tied to documents or messages that were later used to question your performance. I nodded. I'd seen most of it already. But here's where it gets interesting. He leaned in slightly. The access wasn't coming from your device or even from areas near your workstation. These changes originated from machines in the visitor lounge, and one from the VP's assistant's terminal. I narrowed my eyes. Chase's assistant? David didn't confirm, but he didn't deny it either. Why would someone else have my login? I asked. They didn't use your credentials. They used administrative override codes to imitate your session. Temporarily. I felt the anger rising. Slow, heavy, coiled. He wanted me to look incompetent, I said, to make me doubt myself, make others doubt me. David gave a slight nod. It's the oldest play in the book, but also the sloppiest. Later that day, I passed Chase in the hallway. He looked different now. The arrogance was still there, but it was fraying at the edges, more like performance than power. His smile didn't reach his eyes. His stride wasn't as confident. Jessica, he said with mock warmth. Glad you're still with us. After all, we've got a culture of second chances here. I said nothing, just smiled. Then I leaned in slightly and whispered, Hope you've read the new clauses in your contract. For the first time, his smirk faltered. I walked away without another word. The following morning, I received an invitation to the executive review session. The internal audit team would be presenting their initial findings to Mr. Holloway and the board of directors. It wasn't a trial, but it might as well have been. The room was quiet when I entered. David and his team sat at the far end, laptops open. Mr. Holloway stood near the window, looking out across the city skyline with the posture of someone who'd aged 10 years in a week. Chase arrived last. 10 minutes late, of course. He strolled in like he was still in control, coffee in hand, wearing that same ridiculous navy blazer he always wore when he wanted to look in charge. David began the presentation. Quiet, measured, unshakable. He laid out the timeline of activity. The first login irregularities, The fake client messages, the document edits, the inconsistencies. Then he did something unexpected. He switched from spreadsheets to a single slide. A heat map of network access tied to the executive floor. It showed one person repeatedly accessing shared machines late at night and during off hours. A single name kept popping up: Chase Holloway. The room went dead silent. Chase sat forward. That data doesn't prove anything. I've got access to a dozen terminals. Everyone knows that. David didn't flinch. You accessed override protocols tied to Jessica's ID. You also cleared the edit history on 3 sensitive files, not once, multiple times, each edit coinciding with a performance review. Chase laughed. Too loud, too forced. What are you suggesting? That I sabotaged her on purpose? Mr. Holloway turned. Did you? Chase froze. The silence stretched. This is insane, he said. She's just bitter she was let go. I stood, calm, controlled. I wasn't bitter, Chase, I said. Not when you fired me. Not when you tried to erase my credibility. But now, I'm ready. I placed a folder on the table. My own copy of the logs, the messages, the notes, a second paper trail. Mr. Holloway stared at it for a long moment. You sabotaged her, he said, his voice low. You didn't just embarrass yourself, you compromised the entire company's integrity. Chase opened his mouth to object, but Mr. Holloway cut him off. You're suspended, effective immediately, until the board makes its decision. Chase stood there, stunned, like he hadn't really expected it to end like this. He looked around the room, searching for someone to back him up. No one did. He walked out, and just like that, the office exhaled. After the meeting, I stood at the window alone. Mr. Holloway approached, voice quiet. I'm sorry, truly. I gave him too much power without enough oversight. I don't want an apology, I replied. I want change. He nodded. It starts with you. And in that moment, I realized the battle might be over. But the rebuilding had just begun. In the days following Chase's suspension, the office became a strange place. It was quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of quiet that settles after a hurricane, when the damage has been done but no one has picked up the pieces yet. People still spoke in hushed tones, glancing toward the empty executive desk that once held Chase's nameplate. Some whispered he was gone for good. Others speculated he'd return after a brief reputation detox. But no one said it out loud. We'd all seen what he did. And more importantly, we'd all seen him get caught. That changed things. Not just for me, but for everyone who had ever swallowed their voice in meetings, ignored their instincts when something felt off, or wondered if speaking up was worth the fallout. On Wednesday morning, I walked into work and noticed a small envelope placed on my desk. No name, no logo, just my first name written in a hurried scrawl. Inside was a note. Thank you for standing up. Some of us have been afraid to. You gave us courage. No signature, but that didn't matter. The sentiment said enough. I folded it carefully and tucked it into the notebook I'd been using to track everything for the audit. That notebook had become something of a symbol. Evidence, power, memory. Now it also carried this anonymous act of gratitude, a reminder that speaking up had ripple effects I hadn't even anticipated. Mr. Holloway called me into his office later that morning. His demeanor had shifted. More thoughtful, less authoritative. Jessica, he began, we've finalized Chase's departure with the board. I nodded. No surprise there. After the audit findings, there was no saving his position, or his reputation. We're keeping it internal, he added. No press, no legal circus, just a clean exit. I studied him for a moment. Because he's your son? He didn't flinch. Yes, but also because this company doesn't need a scandal. We need healing. I sat silently for a moment, then spoke. And what comes after healing? He met my eyes. Rebuilding, and I want you to be a part of that. Officially. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a formal offer letter, Director of Strategic Partnerships, a title that finally matched the weight I had carried for years. "You've earned this 100 times over," he said, "but I want you to have the authority to lead. No shadows, no footnotes, just your name where it belongs." I should have been thrilled. Instead, I felt something different. Relief. I realized how long I'd been waiting to be seen. How long I'd doubted whether competence and consistency could ever be enough in a world that often rewarded charisma over character. But now I had leverage. Not because I'd demanded it, but because I'd proved it over and over again until no one could ignore it anymore. "I'll accept," I said, "but I want one thing in return." "Name it." "A new protocol," I said, "for internal reporting, anonymous submissions, escalation procedures. I want safeguards, not just for me, but for everyone." Mr. Holloway nodded slowly. "Done." We stood, shook hands, and for the first time since that disastrous Monday morning, I felt like I could finally exhale. That afternoon, I sent a department-wide email. Subject: a fresh start, team. I know it's been a turbulent few weeks. Thank you for your professionalism through it all. Moving forward, my goal is to ensure this team has not just strong leadership, but safety, transparency, and the respect you've all earned. If you have concerns, feedback, or ideas, my door is open. Always. Let's rebuild. Together. Jessica. Within an hour, I had 17 replies. Not complaints, not gossip. Ideas, suggestions, support, even humor. The silence that had once felt so suffocating was finally being replaced by something better. Honest dialogue. But not everything was behind me. Late that evening, as I packed up my things to leave, I received a call from a blocked number. I let it ring. Then another. This time, a voicemail came through. I played it. "Jessica, it's Chase." His voice was shaky, uncertain. Nothing like the smug, dismissive tone from before. "Look, I don't expect you to care, or to forgive me, but I need you to know, I didn't mean for it to go that far. I was trying to prove myself. To my dad, to the board. I panicked." A long pause. "You were right. I didn't read the fine print. I didn't read anything. I just assumed I knew better." Another silence. "Anyway, I'll be out of state for a while, starting over. Good luck. You deserve it." I stood there in the empty office, phone still in hand, the city lights glowing outside the window. I didn't feel sorry for him, but I didn't hate him either. He had tried to destroy my reputation, yes. But in doing so, he had also forced me to reclaim it. Louder, stronger, with purpose. That, ironically, was the beginning of something I never expected. Not revenge, but freedom. 2 weeks had passed since the voicemail. 2 weeks since Chase walked out of the building for the last time. 2 weeks since the company, for the first time in a long while, felt lighter. But change is rarely instant. It's subtle. It creeps in through quiet moments. How people greet each other in the hallway, how they speak up in meetings, how junior staff no longer whisper their ideas like apologies. And slowly, the wounds began to heal. The day my new title became official, I didn't throw a party. I didn't post about it online. I didn't even tell my family. I just printed the offer letter, signed it, and slid it into the drawer beneath my desk. The drawer where, months ago, I had stored a small envelope filled with documentation to protect myself. Now, that same drawer held something else. Proof that I was no longer disposable. Not because someone said so, but because I had made myself impossible to erase. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, I met Mr. Holloway in the glass-walled boardroom. The same place where Chase once tried to present the Turnian deal without even understanding who the key negotiator was. Now, the room was quiet. Just the two of us. He brought a folder with him. He always did. "I've drafted a proposal," he said. "I'd like you to review it before next week's meeting. It outlines a mentorship pipeline modeled after your leadership style. It focuses on retention, internal growth, and ethical leadership. I opened it. The cover page read, Initiative, the Jessica Framework. I blinked. You're naming it after me? He nodded. It was the board's idea. You've become an example of what it looks like to lead through adversity without losing your integrity. For a moment, I said nothing. I just stared at the words, letting them settle. Jessica, he added gently, I know this doesn't undo what happened. And it doesn't erase the years you had to fight harder than you should have. But I hope it's a start. And for the first time in my entire career, I felt something unfamiliar settle into my bones. Peace. That weekend, I took a walk through the neighborhood near my first apartment, the tiny one-bedroom unit where I stayed up until 2 a.m., working on reports, where I learned how to cook with $5 in groceries, where I once cried after being passed over for a promotion by someone I had trained. I paused near the old bench by the bookstore. 10 years ago, I sat there rereading rejection emails and telling myself not to give up. Back then, I thought success meant proving everyone wrong. Now, I knew better. Success was proving myself right. That I was capable. That I did belong. That I deserved to be seen, heard, respected. It just took the firestorm to make me say it out loud. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. I liked the quiet before the day began, before the phones rang and the coffee brewed and the energy shifted. On my desk was another note, handwritten, no envelope. I heard you got promoted. Some of us still talk about how you held the line when it mattered. Thank you for not letting him win. No name, but again, it didn't need one. The message was clear. What I had done, what I had endured, wasn't just about me. It was about every person in that building who had been made to feel small, unseen, unimportant. And maybe, just maybe, they'd start to believe they didn't have to stay silent anymore. At the end of that day, I stood outside the same boardroom window, watching the city move below me. People rushing, lights flickering, lives unfolding. It looked the same. But I wasn't. I had learned the hard way that professionalism without boundaries is just self-sacrifice in a suit. That silence can protect you, until it buries you. And that contracts aren't just paperwork. They're power, written in ink. The fine print Chase never read was more than a clause. It was a metaphor. Because the truth is, most people overlook what isn't loud, what isn't showy, what isn't handed to them by someone with a recognizable last name. But that doesn't make it less valuable. I wasn't loud. I wasn't flashy. I was consistent. I was prepared. And when it mattered most, I was the one they called. Not because I demanded the spotlight, but because I had earned it. Every late night, every ignored idea, every time I chose to stay calm when I could have burned the place down. It had led to this moment, not a revenge story, but a reclamation story. Of voice, of dignity, of worth. And I knew, as I closed the lights in the office that night, that Chase's name would fade in time. But mine was finally etched into the foundation of something far more lasting.